Welcome to the second book of Level 2, the I Read It for the Bragging Rights collection. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Fun retelling of the classic novel by Mark Twain. Tom Sawyer. Troublemaker, Dreamer, Legend. Part 1. Meet Tom Sawyer. Fence painting hustle and Aunt Polly's quirks. Our story opens with Tom Sawyer, a mischievous boy living in the small Mississippi River town of St. Petersburg. He's being raised by his Aunt Polly, who's sweet but perpetually exasperated by Tom's pranks. One minute Tom's skipping chores to go swimming. The next he's sneaking donuts from the pantry. Aunt Polly tries to discipline him with threats of punishment, but Tom's slippery as an eel. Case in point. One Saturday morning, Tom wakes up to find out Aunt Polly wants him to whitewash the fence, a big fence front and center, where all the neighborhood kids can mock him. Total bummer, right? But Tom, being the ultimate hustler, turns this chore into a golden opportunity. When his friend Ben Rogers comes by teasing him for having to work on a Saturday, Tom flips the script. Work. This ain't work. It's an exclusive art form. Not everyone's skilled enough. Ben gets curious, then borderline jealous. Wait, maybe I want to turn. Tom pretends to be reluctant, like he's doing Ben a favor by letting him paint. Next thing you know, every kid who passes is begging to take a turn, bribing Tom with marbles, apple cores, toy pieces, to let them experience this oh-so-special fence painting. By the end of the day, Tom's chilling in the shade with a pile of loot, and the fence is fully painted by other kids. Talk about a comedic hustle. Aunt Polly's clueless, but Tom's basically discovered the secret formula. Make work look like fun, and people will pay you to do it. That's Tom. Cunning, playful, and not super big on actual chores. He'd rather explore the woods, go fishing, or stage mock sword fights with his best friend, Joe Harper. He's also got a half-brother named Sid, a goody two-shoes who loves tattling on Tom. If Tom sneaks jam from the pantry, Sid will squeal, "Aunt Polly, Tom's eating jam again." Tom tries to dodge blame, but half the time, Aunt Polly's already suspicious anyway. Between Aunt Polly's attempts to shape him into a proper boy and Tom's dedication to fun, it's a constant tug-of-war. But Tom's not malicious, just a classic trouble magnet. He's daydreamy, always looking for the next mini-adventure. Whether it's trading marbles, sneaking out for midnight wanderings, or scamming others into doing his chores, Tom's got more schemes than you can shake a paintbrush at. One thing's for sure, Tom Sawyer's daily life is never dull, and his knack for avoiding hard work sets the stage for bigger escapades to come. Next up, he's about to tackle school romance. Hint: Becky Thatcher's in the picture, and maybe something involving graveyards at midnight. The normal childhood stuff, right? Part 2. School shenanigans. Becky Thatcher and playing hooky. Tom's not exactly a star pupil at the local schoolhouse run by that stern teacher, Mr. Dobbins. He'd rather be outside with Joe Harper and Huckleberry Finn, the town's barefoot outcast. Huck's dad is MIA, and Huck basically does whatever he wants. Grown-ups see him as a bad influence, but to Tom, Huck is the ultimate symbol of freedom. No chores, no bedtime, no shoes if he doesn't want them. Meanwhile, Tom has a new obsession. Becky Thatcher, the blonde newcomer whose dad is Judge Thatcher, a local bigwig. Tom spots Becky in school and instantly gets hard eyes. He does all sorts of stunts to impress her, like showing off in the schoolyard, doing cartwheels, or picking fights. Classic annoy the girl you like strategy. Becky's half intrigued, half annoyed, but eventually, Tom manages to woo her into engagement, which means they share a secret vow and plan to get married someday. Kid logic at its finest. But Tom blows it when he accidentally mentions he was previously engaged to Amy Lawrence. Becky storms off, furious. Cue heartbreak. School bores Tom, so he often daydreams about pirates, robber gangs, and buried treasure. Soon, he drags Joe Harper and Huck Finn into a scheme. Let's skip town and become pirates on Jackson's Island. Because that's obviously the next logical step for dealing with heartbreak and dull classes. Joe's been scolded by his mom for stealing cream, and Huck's free as a bird, so they're in. One night, they borrow a raft, cross the Mississippi, and set up camp on Jackson's Island, living off fish, playing with campfires, and telling ghost stories. They're living large, pretending to be outlaws. Back in town, Everyone assumes the boys drowned. The community is in mourning mode, dragging the river to find their bodies. Tom sneaks back one night, sees Aunt Polly crying, and has a pang of guilt, but also a spark of mischief. He decides not to reveal they're alive just yet. Instead, the boys plan a dramatic re-entry. On the day of their own funeral, they stroll down the church aisle. Everyone is stunned, tears turn to laughter, and the boys are instant heroes. Tom revels in the attention, especially hoping Becky will forgive him. She's half impressed, half still annoyed, but she can't ignore that big entrance. Meanwhile, Huck's comfortable with zero parental oversight, but he also feels a little weird about getting so much fuss from the townspeople. Joe's just happy to be part of the crew. Either way, the triumphant return from Jackson's Island cements Tom's status as a local legend in the making. Next up, more drama, including a midnight trip that will haunt Tom's dreams. Part 3. The Graveyard, Injun Joe, and a murder witness. While Tom juggles romance drama at school, he and Huck get obsessed with superstitions, things like warts, dead cats, and secret incantations. They're especially into the idea that swinging a dead cat in a graveyard at midnight might cure warts. Don't ask. It's 19th century kid logic. So one dark night, they sneak to the local cemetery, cat in tow, to do the ritual. Spooky vibes are off the charts. Fog, old tombstones, owls hooting. Suddenly, they see 3 figures. Dr. Robinson, local young doctor, Muff Potter, a drunken friendly simpleton, and Injun Joe, a dangerous guy with a mean streak. The boys hide behind a headstone, petrified. Dr. Robinson hired Potter and Injun Joe to dig up a recently deceased corpse for medical study, super shady. But an argument breaks out. Tensions flare. Injun Joe demands more money, feels disrespected by Dr. Robinson. Punches fly, chaos ensues. Next thing you know, Dr. Robinson hits Muff Potter, knocking him unconscious. But then Injun Joe stabs Dr. Robinson with Potter's knife. The doc collapses dead. Holy murder scene, Batman. Tom and Huck watch in horror as Injun Joe places the bloody knife in the hand of the passed-out Muff Potter, framing him. Then Joe flees. When Potter wakes up, he sees the dead doc and his own knife, and he's like, "What have I done?" He stumbles away, dazed. Meanwhile, Tom and Huck are traumatized. They vow never to speak of this again, sealing it with a blood oath, because they fear Injun Joe might kill them if they squeal. The next day, the town finds Dr. Robinson's corpse. Muff Potter is arrested, accused of murder. He vaguely remembers the fight and assumes he must be guilty. The entire town is outraged. Tom and Huck are racked with guilt. Muff's a harmless drunk who's being set up. But they're equally terrified that if they tell the truth, Injun Joe will come for them. As the trial approaches, Tom's nightmares intensify. He's jumpy whenever he sees a shadow. Huck is equally paranoid, sleeping in empty barrels, always looking over his shoulder. Aunt Polly notices Tom's restless behavior, but chalks it up to more childish nonsense. Becky tries to make up with him, but Tom's too distracted by the murder secret. Eventually, the day of the trial arrives. Everyone expects a quick guilty verdict. Tom can't bear it anymore. He secretly confesses to the defense lawyer about what he saw. In court, Tom testifies. When he implicates Injun Joe, the crowd gasps, Muff Potter is exonerated, and Injun Joe jumps out a window, escaping into the wild. The townspeople freak out, but they cheer Tom as a hero for telling the truth. Still, Injun Joe is free out there. Tom can't shake the dread that Joe might seek revenge. Meanwhile, poor Muff Potter is grateful, though humiliated. Another layer of tension blankets the town. Where is Injun Joe now? Part 4. Sunday School Fiasco and Becky Melodrama. In the wake of the murder trial, Tom's local hero status soars, but that doesn't exempt him from Aunt Polly's demands, like attending Sunday school. The place is run by Mr. Walters, who's big on awarding tickets to kids who recite Bible verses. Collect enough tickets, you supposedly get a fancy Bible. Tom, being Tom, finds a shortcut. He barters for tickets with other kids, exchanging marbles, fish hooks, anything. So on one random Sunday, Tom strides in with a massive stack of tickets, shocking everyone. Mr. Walters is like, Wow, Tom must be a scripture prodigy. Then Judge Thatcher, Becky's dad, is visiting that day, and Mr. Walters tries to impress him by awarding Tom a prize Bible in front of everyone. But Judge Thatcher politely asks Tom to recite some key Bible references, and Tom is clueless. He fumbles, blurts out random nonsense, humiliating Mr. Walters. The congregation stares. It's hilariously awkward. Aunt Polly's fuming at Tom's trickery. Judge Thatcher's politely amused. Tom just shrugs. Hey, hustle's hustle. Meanwhile, Tom's romantic roller coaster with Becky Thatcher continues. They share sweet moments like reading love notes or walking home from school together, until Tom screws up again, maybe bragging about some old flame or messing up a compliment. Becky, in a huff, tears up one of his drawings or storms off. It's a cycle of petty fights and reconciliations, typical kid drama on steroids. Tom tries grand gestures, like ignoring her to make her jealous, or giving her prized possessions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it backfires. One day, the school teacher, Mr. Dobbins, leaves his anatomy book out. Becky, curious, peeks inside. Tom sneaks up behind her, startling her, and she accidentally rips a page. She's panicked, certain Mr. Dobbins will punish her severely. Tom gallantly takes the blame, letting the teacher assume he ripped it. Becky is so grateful. She forgives all Tom's previous nonsense. They're back on track, affection renewed. All the while, the specter of Injun Joe's escape lingers in Tom's mind. He tries to push it aside with typical kid adventures, like forming a robber gang with Joe Harper or playing Robin Hood in the woods. But nights are rough. He sometimes hears rumors that a shadowy figure was spotted near town, or that the old haunted house beyond the hill might be inhabited. Huck, forever living on the fringe, shares ghost stories about Injun Joe, fueling Tom's anxiety. Tom's bored with standard pranks. He craves real excitement. Danger's still out there, though he doesn't fully realize how close it is. Next up, treasure hunts, spooky houses, and more near-death escapades. After all, this is Tom Sawyer. A dull afternoon is an insult to his sense of adventure. Part 5. Tom and Huck's treasure hunt and haunted house creepshow. Once the murder trial dust settles, Tom and Huck's imaginations go into overdrive about buried treasure. They're convinced pirates or robbers must have stashed gold around St. Petersburg. They pick random spots, like a dead tree at midnight, or an abandoned cabin, digging like maniacs. No luck yet. Then they recall a rumored haunted house on the outskirts of town. Perfect place for hidden loot, right? One sweltering day, they venture into the abandoned house, which is indeed half-collapsed and eerie. Dusty furniture, spiderwebs, creaking floors, the works. They rummage around the first floor, find nothing. Then they tiptoe upstairs. Suddenly, they hear voices. Panicked, Tom and Huck freeze, peering through a crack in the floor. Two men enter, one tall, masked in a way the other. It's Injun Joe. Cue internal screaming. Tom and Huck nearly pass out, but they keep silent as mice. The men discuss stashing some stolen goods. They open a box revealing a stash of coins, like hundreds of dollars. Tom's eyes bulge. Huck's heart pounds. Then they mention a map leading to more treasure hidden under a cross sign. Something about number 2 under the cross. Injun Joe also references a revenge plan, though details are fuzzy. The pair decides to move the loot to a safer spot. They start up the stairs, and Tom and Huck scramble to hide behind rotting beams, hearts and throats. Thankfully, the floor collapses slightly, spooking Injun Joe. He and his partner decide to bail. The boys are safe for now. Shaken, Tom and Huck realize they've stumbled onto real criminals' treasure. They vow to track number 2 wherever that is. They suspect it might be a room or a spot in the tavern labeled number 2. Huck, who roams the streets at night, volunteers to keep watch. Meanwhile, Tom deals with everyday life, Becky drama, chores, etc. But he can't stop thinking about Injun Joe. The man's not only a murderer, but also sitting on a fortune in gold. Late nights see Huck lurking around the tavern's back alley, waiting to see if Injun Joe shows up. He tries door after door, but no dice. One locked door might be the fabled number 2. Tension builds. Meanwhile, Tom's half distracted, half living normal kid life, telling tall tales at school. Becky's fed up with him ignoring her again. Aunt Polly's scolding him for missing bedtime. But the lure of real treasure is too strong. Everything feels like it's building to a climax. Injun Joe is still at large, presumably planning something sinister. Tom and Huck are dangerously close to crossing paths with him again. And if they do, it won't just be about treasure. It'll be a matter of life and death. Because Injun Joe doesn't exactly do second chances. Part 6. Becky's picnic and the cave adventure begins. While the number 2 mystery and treasure obsession simmers, social life in St. Petersburg marches on. One highlight: Judge Thatcher organizes a grand outing, a river excursion ending with a picnic near McDougal's Cave, a local tourist spot. Everyone in town's excited, especially the kids. Becky convinces Tom to be her escort, hoping for a romantic-ish day. Tom's stoked for the cave, which is basically a labyrinth of tunnels and chambers. After a day of feasting, games, and frolicking, the group heads to the cave entrance with torches to explore. McDougal's Cave has winding passages, stalactites, weird rock formations, perfect for an adventurous soul like Tom. Becky's enjoying it too, linking arms with Tom. They wander off from the main group, scribbling their names on walls, telling ghost stories. Eventually, the others decide it's time to head back to the picnic site. People start leaving in small groups. But Tom and Becky, lost in their own little world, fail to notice. By the time they realize they're alone, they can't retrace their steps. Every passage looks the same. Their candle supply is limited. Panic sets in. They roam deeper, hoping to find a familiar path, but no luck. Soon they're exhausted, Becky near tears, the candle flame flickering. Meanwhile, outside, folks assume Tom and Becky rode home in another wagon. Only later do they realize the pair is missing. Aunt Polly freaks out. Judge Thatcher freaks out. A search party forms. Days pass and searchers comb the cave, calling out Tom and Becky's names. The kids inside are struggling. Becky's morale plummets. She dozes off while Tom presses on, trying to find a new route. He stumbles across an unexpected horror. In one passage, he sees a figure carrying a torch. It's Injun Joe. Tom nearly screams, but Injun Joe bolts, equally startled. What is the man doing down here? Possibly using the cave as a hideout. Tom panics, thinking, if Injun Joe finds me, he'll kill me. He flees back to Becky, not sure if he dreamt it. Hunger gnaws at them. Becky's sobbing. They share the last scraps of cake from the picnic. Tom tries to be brave, lighting tiny candle stubs, marking passages with soot so they don't walk in circles. The gloom and dread intensify by the hour. They wonder if they'll ever see daylight again. Outside, Aunt Polly's in despair. The entire town is on edge. Huck, meanwhile, is not part of the search. He's been tailing Injun Joe's movements regarding number 2. But when news hits that Tom's lost in the cave, Huck's guilt-ridden. He's sick with worry. The stage is set for a dramatic rescue, or possibly a tragedy. Will Tom's cunning keep them alive? And what about Injun Joe lurking in the darkness? Part 7. Cave escape and Judge Thatcher's lockdown. Just when it seems hopeless, Tom's sense of direction, plus a bit of luck, pays off. He stumbles upon a faint draft of cool air. Following it, he eventually sees a speck of daylight through a narrow crevice. Squeezing through with Becky, he emerges onto a hillside overlooking the river. They're saved. Exhausted, filthy, but alive. The entire town rejoices upon hearing the news. Aunt Polly practically smothers Tom with hugs. Judge Thatcher can't thank Tom enough for keeping Becky safe. Becky recovers quickly at home, while Tom, riding his hero high, recounts the ordeal to stunned friends. He also mentions glimpsing a figure in the cave. Judge Thatcher's like, Injun Joe? The realization that a known criminal is lurking in those dark passages sends chills through everyone. So the judge takes swift action. He seals the cave entrance with an iron door, locks it tight, ensuring no criminals or curious kids can wander in. A few days later, Tom is talking with Judge Thatcher, casually mentions the door being locked. Tom has a sudden horrific epiphany. Injun Joe is still in there. He blurts this out. The judge is horrified. They rush to the cave. Sure enough, behind the newly installed door, they discover Injun Joe, dead from starvation and dehydration, having found no exit. It's a grim end for the man who terrorized Tom's nightmares. This shocking news stuns the town. Some pity Injun Joe's lonely demise, others feel relief that the murderer can't harm anyone anymore. Tom, though shaken, also feels a strange weight lifted. No more fear of revenge. No more glancing over his shoulder. The cave is locked for good. Life can move on. But remember that treasure? Tom's not forgotten the gold rumor from that haunted house, nor number 2 under the cross. He suspects the cave might hold secrets. Now that Injun Joe's dead, what if the loot is stashed in one of those hidden chambers? A plan forms. Tom knows the cave's layout better than anyone after that ordeal. He ropes in Huck. They gather supplies, torches, food, ropes, deciding to re-enter the cave with permission from the judge, presumably unlocking the door. This time, they're not scared of getting lost. They'll systematically search for any sign of Injun Joe's stash, because if that man carried the stolen gold around, it might be hidden in some cranny or under a rock. So, ironically, the place that almost killed Tom and Becky becomes the next frontier for a treasure hunt. Huck's excited but also spooked. The memory of starving in the darkness is fresh in Tom's mind, too, but the lure of gold is strong. Off they go, deeper into the labyrinth once again. Only this time, they've got the advantage of experience. Will they finally claim that long-rumored payday? Part 8. Finding the treasure and Huck's identity crisis. Tom and Huck re-enter McDougal's cave, methodically exploring corridors by candlelight. Tom leads them to spots he recalled near where he glimpsed Injun Joe. They notice fresh signs, a niche in the wall that looks disturbed, footprints in dried mud. After searching behind a rock, they discover a small recess blocked by a large stone. They push it aside and bingo, a stash of gold coins and valuables. The same bag Tom recognized from the haunted house scenario. So it's confirmed. Injun Joe must have dragged the treasure here, using the cave as a hideout. Now Tom and Huck are the rightful finders. The sight of the gold, piles of coins, possibly worth thousands, overwhelms them. Huck's first reaction is fear. We can't keep all this, can we? Tom's like, heck yes, this is pirate loot. They fill a sack and lug it out, hearts pounding. Once they exit, they collapse in exhausted glee. The next step, show the grown-ups. They drag the heavy bag all the way to town, causing quite a commotion. People gather at Aunt Polly's house, jaws dropped. Judge Thatcher and the local authorities count it, confirming it's a small fortune. Boom. Overnight, Tom and Huck go from scruffy kids to owners of actual wealth. This triggers a wave of adult meddling. For Huck, it's extra weird. He's always been the free spirit, sleeping in barrels, nobody telling him what to do. Suddenly, the widow Douglas, a kind lady in town, insists on adopting Huck and civilizing him, since he now has money. She feels morally obliged. Plus, she's grateful to Huck for something. He once saved her from Injun Joe's revenge. Huck hates the idea of wearing starched clothes, praying at mealtimes, and abiding by a bedtime. But the widow's gentle, so he tries to endure. Tom, on the other hand, is stoked. He's already got a stable home with Aunt Polly. He's still pulling pranks and daydreaming about future robber bands, but now with a big nest egg to fund his fantasies. The adults invest the gold at interest, giving the boys a small allowance weekly, which is still more than most folks earn. The townspeople are in awe of Tom's luck or cunning. Becky's impressed too. She can't believe her on-again-off-again crush is basically rolling in dough. But Huck struggles with civilized life. He runs away one night, tries to slip back into his vagrant style. Tom tracks him down, persuades him that being respectable can be part of the next big adventure, like forming a gang of robbers who also have a nice house to stash loot. Huck's half convinced. Eventually, he returns to the widow Douglas, resigned to give it another shot. They seal a new partnership. Tom's lively imagination, Huck's rebellious streak, and a shared fortune to fuel future escapades. The stage is set for them to remain best pals, weaving in and out of ordinary life. Part 9. The grand finale and why Tom's story still shines. With the treasure secured, Injun Joe's threat ended, and Becky Thatcher now a friend again, Tom Sawyer can bask in the glow of success. Aunt Polly brags about her nephew's bravery. though she still scolds him for small mischief. The town sees Tom differently. He's not just the prankster who cons friends into painting fences. He's the kid who survived a cave ordeal, testified at a murder trial, and discovered hidden gold. Hero status for sure. As for day-to-day life, Tom's still Tom, skipping chores, sneaking off to the river, roping Huck into little adventures. But there's a new layer of respect. People realize he's got guts and a big heart beneath all the shenanigans. Becky's father, Judge Thatcher, even praises Tom, letting him hang around their house more often. Becky pretends to be annoyed but secretly enjoys Tom's attention. Huck Finn, now a reluctant resident of the widow Douglas's house, wrestles with the concept of wearing clean clothes and attending Sunday school. Sometimes he complains to Tom, who teases him about being fancy. But there's a bond there that won't break. They both dream of bigger escapades, maybe heading downriver, maybe forming a robber band in some hidden cave. The ephemeral nature of childhood illusions is strong, but for now, they ride the wave of youth. Mark Twain ends the novel acknowledging that Tom's story can't cover every adult-level detail. He's a boy, after all, living in a boy's world. The book's about the innocence, cunning, curiosity, and resilience that define a certain slice of American childhood. Over the years, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer has stuck around because it nails that universal longing for freedom and fun. It's got humor, whitewashing fences, scamming for Sunday school tickets, heart, Tom risking his reputation to save Muff Potter, and spooky thrills, the graveyard murder, the cave. Tom's key lesson? Even a mischievous kid can show courage and loyalty when it matters. He has a moral compass. Maybe a bit askew, but it's there. Plus, the comedic tone reminds us not to take life too seriously. Aunt Polly's exasperated but loves him, and that tension is a timeless parent-kid dynamic. So the story ends with Tom on top of the world, wealthy in kid standards, beloved by Becky, tight with Huck, and daydreaming about the next big fling. Mark Twain hints there are more exploits ahead if Tom doesn't grow up too soon. Indeed, Tom Sawyer reappears in other Twain works, but that's another story. For now, we leave him in St. Petersburg, baseball cap, straw hat, tilted, pockets full of marbles and trifles, imagination spinning faster than the Mississippi current. He's forever an emblem of that rebellious sparkle in every kid's soul, the unstoppable belief that any day can be an adventure if you're creative and sneaky enough. You painted the fence of Tom Sawyer like a storytelling pro. Mark Twain would call you the ultimate adventurer. High fives all around. Next up, we will dive into Pride and Prejudice. Jane Austen's classic is full of romance, rivalries, and razor-sharp comebacks as Elizabeth Bennet takes on society and Mr. Darcy. Let the drama begin. Also, don't forget to smash that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay in the loop for all our epic content. And guess what? A new fun retelling audiobook drops every single weekday.